premiere episode of Destination Harlem TV. I'm Lydia Patel. Thanks for joining us. You are now watching the show that will showcase some of the people, places, events, and activities that make Harlem so great and unique. Whether you are a lifetime resident, a frequent visitor, tourist, or just curious about what's happening in Harlem, we will bring it all to you. Here's what we'll bring in this episode. I will talk to you about some of the panelists from Harlem's Park to Park Earth Day 2013 discussion at MIST. Destination Harlem's tour guide and historian Lavelle Porter will introduce you to the history of Harlem. Host Meg will get to talk to the owners of Harlem Shake Restaurant before it opens. And finally, I will sit down for a conversation with Marcia Sells of Columbia University and longtime Harlem resident. Thanks so much for tuning in. We really look forward to showing you the best nightlife, shops, music, events, and people of Harlem. Be sure to follow us and interact with us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Now, time to enjoy this week's episode of Destination Harlem TV. I'm Lydia Patel, and today Destination Harlem TV is at the Harlem Earth Day series put together by Harlem Park to Park at MIST, My Image Studios, right on 116th Street. Today we have a panel of discussions that will be taking place talking about the farm-to-table and organic foods. Several notable speakers are lined up. Let's have a look.
There's obviously a huge food chasm in this country, and it's a different challenge in urban communities. I think a goal would be that when we put farm to table on eventually will be that you don't have to mention it, because progress is that it's natural. Like, no one's going to say, we have electricity tonight.
Farm to table, which I guess is another way of saying the local movement, it is the strongest food trend that we have in this country today by far. A lot of what we do in our company is quantify the demand for local food in different places all over the country, and it is the unstoppable trend at the moment.
Because kids are all passed out, they're crashing from the sugar, and so there's no education happening. And then when we came and we changed the meals, they'd at least get a full 7 hours of education time. And then breakfast is another thing, where kids would come hyped up on cereal, and you'd get that 8 a.m. rush and then a 9 a.m. crash. And but replacing that with whole foods for breakfast, whole grains and fresh fruit, that kids could sustain themselves so much.
You put your dollar bills in that, at the green market and Whole Foods, like where you can. I know that it's not readily available for everyone, and I realize that farmers markets can only provide for a fraction of us, but I do think that supermarkets have a lot more power than we think.
We've been supporting small business people to become food entrepreneurs for 25 years here in New York City, and the Green Card Initiative was just a great opportunity for us to help entrepreneurs use fruits and vegetables to raise awareness and increase consumption of fruits and vegetables.
My role in this community is really to show that you can get great farm-to-table produce, make that into something great. All it takes is a little bit of time and effort, and you're going to come out with something great. And you're also going to be nurturing yourself and feeling good about the changes that you're making. So I think it's really important as food writers and people that are, in the public eye, that we're doing great things to also better and educate our communities.
Tonight on the panel, you had a different role in terms of you were actually supplying meals for the education system, for kids in school, trying to get everyone to eat healthier, get more information on that. Why don't you share more insight?
Well, we provide meals for about 100 schools in the city. We serve over 20,000 meals a day, and they're all cooked fresh from scratch at our facility in Harlem.
Now, who gets to decide on the menu? Now, 20,000 meals a day, that's a lot of food, a lot of real cooking that gets involved. So tell us about the process of one day of getting all this ready.
We have an amazing chef and a great team of cooks. We have about 65 cooks, and it all starts at 4 a.m., and they cook all day. We do breakfast, we do lunch, snacks, and we even do dinners.
Hi, I'm Lavelle Porter from Big Onion Walking Tours for Destination Harlem TV. So we're standing at the corner of 110th Street and 8th Avenue, also known as Frederick Douglass Boulevard, next to the statue of Frederick Douglass. 110th Street is also Central Park North. And we're here today talking about the early history of the neighborhood of Harlem. The story of Harlem begins with the story of the island of Manhattan itself. Now, the first people to live on the island were Native Americans. They were known as the Lenape, it's spelled L-E-N-A-P-E. And it's from the Lenape that we get the name Manhattan. That is taken from the Lenape name for the island, Mannahatta, which meant island of many hills. Now, most people who've been to New York can tell there's not a lot of hills left. A lot of that's been flattened out with all the building projects through the years. And up in Manhattan, you can still see some of the hills that gave the island its name. In 1609, there was a ship called the Half Moon that sailed into New York Harbor. That ship was owned by a company from the Netherlands called the Dutch East India Company. And the captain of the ship is a British sailor named Henry Hudson. And that's the name I recognize from various places around the city, including the river on the west side of Manhattan. And in retrospect, we look at that ship as a representation of the first two European nations that settled here. By the 1620s, the first Dutch settlers began to arrive. And by 1626, they'd established a colony on the southern tip of the island, where today's financial district is, below Wall Street. And Wall Street actually was a physical wall that was the northern boundary of that original colony. So in a similar fashion, Harlem's name also comes from the Netherlands. In 1658, a group of Dutch settlers explored the area north of the New Amsterdam colony and decided to establish the village of New Harlem, named for the town of Harlem in the Netherlands, spelled with two A's, H-A-A-R-L-E-M. And the village of New Harlem, established in 1658, was essentially above where present-day 86th Street is in Manhattan, to the north of the island. So we're standing at the corner of 110th Street and 8th Avenue, which is also known as Frederick Douglass Boulevard. And this is really the southern boundary of Harlem here at 110th Street. Today when we're talking about the boundaries of Harlem, you have 110th Street at Central Park North, and it goes all the way up to 155th Street, which was originally the northernmost street on the 1811 grid plan. And it stretches all the way across from the Harlem River on the east side to the Hudson River on the west side. So that's a rather large area. There's a lot of different communities within the expanse of what we call Harlem today. Now, for most of its history, it remained farmland through the 1700s and 1800s, with a few exceptions. You had a few wealthy New Yorkers who established country estates here. This was kind of like the suburbs, if you want to think of it that way. And one New Yorker who had an estate here was a man by the name of Alexander Hamilton, first Secretary of the Treasury and founder of the Bank of New York. He had a house built here called Hamilton Grange, completed in 1801, just 3 years before Hamilton was assassinated in that famous duel with Aaron Burr. So Hamilton Grange is actually still here in Harlem. It was recently moved off of a city block and moved into the corner of St. Nicholas Park. And that was an example of some of the country estates that were here, but mostly remained farmland through the 1800s. By the end of the 1800s, you had more and more buildings being built in Upper Manhattan, as it was expected that more and more people would move and live in this section of Manhattan.
You've been up or down Lenox Avenue since summer of 2012. You've surely noticed this place. Host Meg talked with the owners of Harlem Shake before they opened up to give us a peek of what to expect from this soon-to-be Harlem destination.
When I say Harlem Shake, you might want to dance. But very soon when I say Harlem Shake, you might get hungry. I'm Meg Malley with Destination Harlem TV, and we're here at the soon-to-be opened Harlem Shake restaurant. We're here with founder of Harlem Shake, Jelena Pasek, and investment partner, Darja Koksum. You both seem to have so much invested in Harlem Shake. How did the two of you start working on this project together?
Well, actually, we were introduced by my father, Dard, who has been in the restaurant business for a few years. And he and Jelena have known each other for some time. So he actually introduced me to the project about a year ago. And it was like, as soon as I heard of it, I was like, oh my God, you have to introduce me to her. So once she and I started talking, it was like history from there.
The neighborhood is already excited by the beautiful graffiti we have displayed on Harlem Shake. Tell us where that came from.
Well, it was really inspired as a response to the Harlem Shake craze that hit the internet about in the beginning of February. Because we were taking a blast. We named this place about 6 months ago, and out of the blue, before you know it, we had 27,000 likes on Facebook just because of the name. But we did want to bring publicity and attention to the fact that Harlem Shake is part of Harlem history. It's a dance that was here before all this, and we contracted a young graffiti artist. His name is Kendall Harper. He's a really brilliant guy to do this shed, and if you take a good look at the letters above, to say do the real Harlem Shake. We love the new Harlem Shake. It's fun. It's very funny. But we do, have respect for the past and for what this community and neighborhood really thinks when you say Harlem Shake. This is it.
Tell us about the building and if there's any history of why you chose to be here.
Yes, when we first signed the lease with our landlord, I along with my interior designer Dennis Decker, who did a fantastic job. I couldn't be more grateful for all of his work. He suggested we take some historic photos from the New York City archives, and this is what we did. So we have some photos from 1940, 1969, which depict this same location, the same building, and it's so fantastic to see that actually back before the World War II, this place was a restaurant with a sidewalk cafe, and it's so fantastic. We actually took a lot of that inspiration to create our design. Also, once we started getting underway with demolition, we found the original tile. We spent months looking for the original Anglais style, and guess what? We found it. And also, we found the tin in the tin ceiling, which we refurbished, a big part of it, and you'll be seeing it in the store once it opens.
This area is such a big part of the heart of your restaurant you're creating. Tell us a little bit about your connection to the neighborhood.
Well, I was actually born and raised in Harlem, and I've been here about 25 years now. And, it's a neighborhood I'm very familiar with my grandpa living a few blocks away. So this is a neighborhood that, I would play in as a kid. My grandmother would take me out to restaurants, especially uptown, if anyone remembers Pan Pan. That was like our Sunday morning thing. We would always go there. So when Jelena told me about the location, I was like, oh my God, this is perfect. It was like, in the heart of home. It was just, you couldn't ask for a better spot.
The weather is already getting nicer. It's a gorgeous day here in Harlem. And a very exciting part about Harlem Shake is there's a plan for a sidewalk cafe.
Yeah, we will have a sidewalk cafe. It would really be a shame not to utilize this extra wide sidewalk, which this wonderful Lenox Avenue boasts. I mean, Lenox Avenue really looks like a Paris boulevard. Everyone could agree it's different. Now, food-wise, We are going to have top quality ingredients. We already set up our account with Patla Frida, which is going to be our meat purveyor. Our shakes are going to be organic from Organic Valley milk and Blue Marble ice cream, which I also think is pretty fabulous in the neighborhood. And I don't want to really talk so much more about it because I want you to come in and check yourself.
Well, we are dying to taste all of this. That sounds delicious. I want a big milkshake right now. Well, we love the outside of it, but I'm dying to see a little sneak peek of inside.
Sure, go ahead.
Just a sneak.
Marcia Sells is a Dean and Associate Vice President at Columbia University. She works in government and community affairs and is a longtime resident in Harlem. I sat down with Marcia and had a talk with her about Columbia University, Harlem, and her diverse life. And I'm here with Marcia Sells from the Columbia University School of the Arts and Community and Government Affairs. Marcia, welcome to Destination Harlem TV.
Thank you very much.
So I know that I know you wear many, many hats. So why don't you give us a breakdown and a little more insight of what it is you do on a day-to-day basis with these titles?
I wound up here back at Columbia University in 2002 after having my daughter and after working for the National Basketball Association and for Reuters International, and just realized that rather than working in a corporate setting, that it was probably a good time to try and return to the university. And my old boss of the NBA, David Stern, was the chair of the board of the university, and the new president, Lee Bollinger, was about to come in. They needed someone to run the inauguration or to assist, and gave me an opportunity to sort of ease my way back. I started out in the Office of Government and Community Affairs as an Associate Vice President, and it was working first on Manhattanville and doing the outreach and the connection with community organizations, with the Community Board 9, 7, 12, 10, connecting them and letting them know about the programs and the resources here at the university.
You actually have history in the Harlem Dance Theater. You worked in Brooklyn. Give us a bit of background on that.
Well, so I actually met Arthur Mitchell in 1969 in my hometown in Cincinnati when the company that he had just formed was having sort of an early tour, and they were going to college campuses. I then was the only black child in my ballet program, so it wasn't hard to miss me. And he said he was forming a school at that time and was going to start a summer program, invited me to attend. I came, so in the following year, 1970, came to Harlem, and their first summer program was at the Church of the Master on 123rd and Morningside Avenue. So that was my sort of real first introduction to Harlem. And then every year I came back for the summer program. Mr. Mitchell kept asking me, when are you going to move? Kept asking my parents when they were going to let me go. It all didn't quite work out until about 1975. After I had spent a summer at School of American Ballet, I think my family felt comfortable that I could manage New York City, and so then Mr. Mitchell said, please come, and invited me to come and join the company. And the rest sort of is history, because I stayed. I didn't go back to Cincinnati, although my family, my parents and my younger brother were still there, but I really grew fond of both New York City, Harlem, and then Mr. Mitchell, also as a Harlemite, really helped ease all of us into that community. But the school is a big, big part of what is the Harlem arts and culture. Collaborating with Harlem Stage, Jazzmobile, which is the oldest continuous organization
Sure,
focused
why don't
on
you give us
jazz.
some information
Well,
on that?
here, this is our brochure for the Harlem Jazz Shrines Festival. The Apollo is also a part of this, and the Apollo is actually one of the jazz shrines. We have been providing panels and symposiums, and we'll do one in May. And the festival runs from May 6th through the 11th with events. We have a website, harlemjazzshrines.org, so please go see the events. And then we'll have an amazing panel discussion talking about the Cotton Club and the aspects, not just of the music, but the reality of what was happening around that era of the Cotton Club in the 20s and 30s. It was segregated. I don't think people realize that about the jazz programs. I mean, jazz clubs throughout Harlem, that black performers could go in, but black audience could not go in. So it was sort of black entertainers, wide audience, talking about that and how it shaped jazz, but also how here we are now, both in talking about the shrines and how it has evolved and changed and how much jazz is still a part of it, but definitely in terms of this sort of thriving, integrated, multicultural experience that one has now.
That's it for the first episode of Destination Harlem TV. We really hope you enjoyed it and maybe learned a little something interesting about wonderful Harlem. Be sure to join us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Don't forget to catch all of our future episodes, as we'll show you more of the great places, shops, and activities like Earth Day in Marcus Garvey Park, Flower Boutique Harlem Flow, and Harlem Haberdashery, a clothing experience like no other. Thanks for watching. I'm Lydia Patel for Destination Harlem TV.
This is why we don't work with kids and animals.
My booty